Thank you for joining us today. It's really nice to spend some time with you and be a part of Festival of Media. My name is Mike Caprio, and with my team here, we're responsible for servicing Latin America for Sizmek. So, before we start, how many of you are familiar with Sizmek? Show of hands? Okay. How many of you are familiar with MediaMind? Okay, same amount. So we've been doing this for about 15 years. And with the evolution of digital advertising, we've evolved from a rich media platform now to a full open ad management platform with data, with creative, and with campaign management. The word seismic actually comes from a Turkish word, sezmi, which means intuition or to know. And one of the reasons why we chose a Turkish word is that it really sits as the connection between East and West. And that's really going to serve as the basis for our discussion today, because at the end of the day, we're a global company, and my goal here is to inform and educate you on a global perspective as we look at our Latin American business. So we've been in Latam for the last 6 years. We have offices in Mexico City, in Sao Paulo, in Buenos Aires, and we have partners in Colombia and Guatemala, and out of that, we service all of Latam. But we also have offices all around the world, and we manage campaigns in 70 countries. 70 countries. So what that allows us to do is to take best practices and learnings from all around the world and be able to bring them to Latam to give each of you a competitive advantage in your marketplace. So my team gets mad at me when we look at Latam in comparison to the rest of the world. I say, well, Mike, that's not fair. Latam is very different than the rest of the world. But there isn't a single market that isn't different. Malaysia is very different than Japan, even though they're both in Asia. Chicago and Los Angeles couldn't be any more different. So the key is that when we want to measure ourselves and our performance, and we want to share best practices and ROI with our clients in Latam, we measure ourselves against the best. And so this is the story of the Oakland A's. I don't know how many of you are Major League Baseball fans, but the Oakland Athletics had no choice but to benchmark themselves against the best. They play against the mighty New York Yankees, and they share a city with the San Francisco Giants, and they also share a lot of competing entertainment in the San Francisco market. So what I want to share with you is a little bit of a case study that goes back to the 2002 baseball season. As you can see here on the grid, this is the list of every Major League Baseball team and their payroll, how much they're spending on players. And as you can see, the New York Yankees spent just under $140 million, and the Oakland A's spent just over $35 million. How are the Oakland A's supposed to compete when all the best players, all the highest-priced players are being taken by the likes of the Yankees and then their competition, the San Francisco Giants? So this was a study that a famous author in the United States, Michael Lewis, wanted to investigate. He wrote a book called Moneyball. How many of you guys have seen the movie with Brad Pitt? Okay, great. For those of you who haven't seen the movie or read the book, this is a case study on how a business with significant disadvantages in both revenue and the ability to compete had to reinvent itself to be able to compete out in the marketplace. So this is a clip from the movie. What you'll see here is the general manager of the Oakland A's, played by Brad Pitt, sitting with his assistant general manager, talking about ways that they're going to change the way that they measure and how they plan for their business, which is ultimately the business of baseball.
So using this equation on the upper left right here, I'm projecting that we need to win at least 99 games in order to make it to the postseason. We need to score at least 814 runs in order to win those games and allow no more than 645 runs.
What's this?
This is the code that I've written for our year-to-year projections. This is building in all the intelligence that we have to project players.
Okay.
It's about getting things down to one number. using the stats the way we read them, we'll find value in players that nobody else can see. People are overlooked for a variety of biased reasons and perceived flaws. Age, appearance, personality. Bill James and mathematics cut straight through that. Billy, of the 20,000 notable players for us to consider, I believe that there is a championship team of 25 people that we could afford, because everyone else in baseball undervalues them.
Okay. So one of the ways that the Oakland A's changed their philosophy is that, and you don't have to be a baseball fan to understand this, there were simple metrics that were used for over 100 years to measure performance of baseball players. You see up on the top batting average, home runs, RBIs, earned run average. But these are superficial statistics. It tells you only the top level of the story. It doesn't go deep enough to uncover insights. So what the Oakland A's did, and what has been adopted by every major professional sports team in baseball and outside of baseball over the last decade, is the use of advanced metrics. So instead of looking at batting average, instead of looking at just home runs, they looked into advanced metrics that went below the superficial level to help them compete against the New York Yankees, who are spending 3 times the amount of money that they were in payroll. This is what happened at the end of the 2002 season. The New York Yankees spent $1.2 million for every win. The Oakland A's spent just under $400,000. They had the same amount of wins. So what this did was it set a trend off in the industry. This gave the Oakland A's a competitive advantage. This is what I'm hoping to communicate to Latam as we look at to the rest of the world. And so the rest of the world has managed to adopt a similar approach to looking at KPIs for digital. So in Latam, we still look at things like click-through rates. You know, we still look at base level impressions and total conversions and cost per thousands, when we should be looking at interaction rates and dwell, the amount of time people are spending with the creative units in terms of engagement, and effective CPM based upon viewable and verified impressions. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of minutes. How many of your impressions are being overlapped across your publishers? Is there a better opportunity for reach? And then the last one, the path to conversion. You know, we spend a ton of money in search. Google can attest to that. But there are so many different touch points along the way that get you to that last conversion. And unless you look at that full path, you're not getting the full story. So today, we're not soothsayers, we're not future tellers, but what we are is we have perspective. We get to see the performance of campaigns from all around the world, and it gives us the opportunity to be able to show you tomorrow today, to give each one of you a competitive advantage based upon the performance of campaigns and great activity that happens around the rest of the world. So when I started in Latam just about a year ago, it was widely adopted that Latam was 2 years behind the rest of the world. Do you guys believe that Latam is 2 years behind the rest of the world? Show of hands. It's okay. Okay. Well, I don't believe it either. And the reality is that there are so many opportunities for us to be able to take this myth and throw it out the window. And one of the ways that we can do this is by education, by showing each one of you, brands, agencies, technology partners, data companies, to understand the trends from around the world and be able to leverage them here. So what we did was, we did a digital sophistication study about a month ago with thought leaders from around the world. And we asked a couple of fundamental questions. The first one is, how important is data in your own company? And this is a personal opinion survey. And you'll see that the rest of the world and Latam are fairly similar. Data is important universally. And then we asked, do you believe that your organization is digitally sophisticated? And from a score of 0 to 10, how do you feel? And again, LATAM is in the ballpark. But when we look at this in practice, we start to see a different story. The rest of the world uses dynamic creative 1/3 more than LATAM. And dynamic creative, for those of you who aren't familiar, is the use of data to make better decisions about what creative is being served to your audience at the right time, based upon geography, based upon previous activity, based upon what we know about them. Then you have verification and viewability. Are your ads being shown in locations and on sites that you had bought? And are they even being seen by a person? These are very critical as we move forward and something that needs to be adopted more in LATAM. Attribution. Where did the conversion come from? And then interactive video. As we heard before, television is king, and it certainly is in LATAM. To be able to take your existing television commercials and add digital interactive elements to it adds enormously to the completion rate and to the performance of videos overall. And these are all very easily implemented with just a little bit of education. And as we looked at the simple metrics versus the advanced metrics for the Oakland A's, these are the KPIs that are being used mostly around the world. Nobody's using click-through rate anymore. It's about dwell, it's about cost per acquisition, it's about completed view, and it's about what percentage of your buy is within the viewable window. These are things that need to be adopted, and from a tool set perspective, these are available to you today. The next thing that we asked is about the use of programmatic. So there's a panel in the next hour talking about programmatic, and I think that it's a great time to be talking about programmatic because if we compare LATAM to the rest of the world, 10% or less of the media spent in LATAM in programmatic. Ironically, when we asked this thought leadership group what they thought about next year, look at LATAM jump. Now this seems fairly aggressive to me, to move from less than 10% to between 26 and 50%. But this is a trend and something that the marketplace needs to understand and needs to be able to take advantage of, because programmatic does bring a competitive advantage and can bridge the gap between us and the rest of the world. So what we did was we created a sophistication index. And this sophistication index was taking seismic data from around the world to help us determine how LATAM was comparing to our peers around the world. And the index is based upon our data-driven advertising products. So North America is the most sophisticated. They set the benchmark for the rest of the world. But what really surprised me, and when we talked about LATAM being 2 years behind, 2 years ago, Asia and LATAM were peers. They were both emerging markets. They both had the world ahead of them. And Asia leapfrogged LATAM. Not only leapfrogged LATAM, they leapfrogged Europe. They are more data-driven and they are more sophisticated based upon our clients that we've seen than anybody except for North America, and they're close behind North America. Then we take a look at LATAM. So some of you would say, oh, that's terrible. Well, it's not good. But what it does give is a tremendous opportunity for those of you in this room and those of you in this region to use this as a competitive advantage to beat out your peers, both from an agency, from a brand, from a technology perspective, because if the rest of the region is this bad, if you adopt some of these practices, you can improve your performance overall. So the question that we get is and I'm sure some of you would say this if I asked, is okay, well, I get it, right? But we're not a data-driven culture. How do we move to a data-driven advertising culture in my organization? And there are a couple of ways to do that. I think the first thing is how do you convince the CMO, right? So what does the CMO care about in their organization? They care about ROI, of course, right? Their return on investment. But they also care about how they understand their audiences. So by understanding their audiences, they can create better products, they can create better services, and they can sell more of them. The next executive that may not be present so much in LATAM is the Chief Information Officer. This person is critical to adopting a data-driven culture anywhere around the world. The CIO is responsible for putting together business intelligence systems that make sense of all the data. How do you merge offline sales data with offline marketing spend, merging it with online, and how do we make sense of all of that? That's the Chief Information Officer's job. The next one, of course, is the CFO. What does the CFO care about? Money. CFO wants to figure out how you can make more money and spend less money. If you can find ways to drive efficiency in your organization with your media purchasing habits and understanding the better ways to drive more out of your audiences, the CFO is on board. And then lastly, the chief. If you get all of the other people to buy in, the CEO will buy in because why? Because this is just good business. They'll make an investment in a data-driven culture and it will improve performance overall. So, why should you care, right? I always ask myself at the end of every presentation, why should I care? And the reason is that every single one of us in this room competes. We may be friends and we're going to go have some drinks later on, and we're in the same industry, but brands compete against other brands. Publishers compete against other publishers for media dollars. Agencies compete against each other for clients. We are all in competition. And what will happen is that just because you don't adopt a data-driven strategy doesn't mean the person next to you isn't, which means that they're going to have a competitive advantage to you in the marketplace. The good thing is that we work with many of you as your primary campaign management system. And if we don't, we're happy to help. We're happy to help educate you so that you make sure that you don't get your clock cleaned by somebody who adopts these practices and you sat on the sidelines. In the similar way the Oakland A's did this to the rest of the sporting world. So, the easiest ways to drive ROI in digital really come down to 4 basic things. The first one is audience buying. It's a very new practice in LATAM. Typically you will buy a publisher. If you want to reach sports people, you will be on Terra, you'll be on ESPN, but there are ways to reach sports fans on other places that may be cheaper. We can help. Verification and viewability. This has been a big adoption point for the rest of the world, making sure that the ads you buy are on sites that you expected, in geographies that you wanted, in a brand safe environment, and most importantly, could be seen by your audience, not just by a computer. And then you've got dynamic creative, which is leveraging data to build better creative units and make sure that not only are you buying the right audiences, but you're delivering the right creative to them at the right time. It's absolutely critical, and it drives performance. And then the last one is being able to take data and driving insights and analytics, something that we can help with. Even if you are not a data-driven organization, you can adopt these practices, and we can help make you more successful and give you a competitive advantage in the marketplace. So as we wrap up, I really want to encourage each one of you to leapfrog the competition. Do what Asia did to the rest of the world. Adopt data-driven principles and sophistication in your digital campaigns and leapfrog your peers. Be the best performing agency in LATAM. Be the best performing brand in LATAM. And you can start now. So my email is below. My Twitter handle is below. I'm happy to send this presentation out to anybody who would like to see it. And that's it. Thank you very much.